The rain drummed a steady, soothing rhythm against the window pane as I sat hunched over my desk, feigning an interest in the pile of textbooks that usually captivated me. But tonight, the words blurred into a senseless maze, my mind wandering to the room down the hall where he resided, my foster brother, Daniel. He had always been a beacon of warmth in my otherwise grayscale world, ever since we were kids huddled together in a foster home that couldn't contain our boundless dreams. Now, as adults sharing a quaint two-bedroom apartment, the nature of my affection had grown complicated, less brotherly, and more something else. The word danced at the edge of my thoughts, a taunting ghost I dared not name aloud. I drew a deep breath, feeling the moisture in the air settle in my lungs. Then, the familiar creak of his door echoed through the hallway, followed by the soft pad of his footsteps. I glanced up, just in time to see Daniel's silhouette framed by the soft glow of the hallway light. "Hey, Alex, you busy?" His voice, always melodic, carried a hint of curiosity. "Never too busy for you," I replied, almost too quickly. I couldn't halt the upward twitch of my lips as I met his eyes. Daniel walked in, a kaleidoscope of subtle movements, the way his fingers combed through his hair, the crinkle at the corner of his eyes when he smiled, tired yet genuine. He collapsed onto my bed, the springs groaning in protest, and stretched out like an oversized cat. "I've got news," he said, a curious gleam dancing in his eyes. My chest tightened. Whatever he was about to say, I could sense it would add another intricate layer to my already convoluted emotions. "Oh, spill it," I said, leaning back in my chair, trying and failing to appear nonchalant. "You know Kevin from the coffee shop?" Daniel's expression was open, yet a flicker of uncertainty shadowed his gaze. "Kevin? Yeah, the barista with the terrible puns," I noted, feeling a whisper of unease. Kevin had been around a lot lately, his bubbly presence a stark contrast to the solemn quiet of our little sanctuary. "Well, he asked me out," Daniel confessed, his cheeks flushing a delicate pink. "Like on an actual date." I managed a smile, despite the knots forming in my stomach. "That's great, Danny, really." But my voice betrayed me, the words tinged with an unfamiliar bitterness. Daniel's grin widened. "Drew, though he seemed to weigh my reaction, you sure you're okay with it? You sound weird." Weird was an understatement. Jealous was closer to the truth, maybe even possessive. I swallowed hard, banishing the spiraling thoughts before they could take root. Of course, why wouldn't I be? But as I watched him relay the details of their planned evening, a dinner at some trendy new bistro, I zoned out, nodding in the right places but battling the ache festering in my chest. Each laugh, each excited gesture of his hands was a blade turning deeper. Later, as the night wore on and Daniel retreated to his room, the apartment wove a cocoon of tranquility around me. I remained at my desk, papers strewn about, though my eyes were fixed on the empty doorway. The silent house was a conspiracy, magnon, amplifying my thoughts, my feelings, until they were impossible to ignore. Why did it have to be Kevin? Why did it have to be anyone at all? We had done just fine, hadn't we? I pondered over obscure facts, desperate for distraction. Did you know armadillos can hold their breath for up to 6 minutes while crossing rivers? Or that in Japan, there's a belief that blood type can influence personality? But neither trivia nor my futile calculations could dim the truth gnawing at my soul. My feelings for Daniel went far beyond the confines of brotherly love. Sleep eluded me, stolen by thoughts of Daniel and Kevin laughing over a candlelit dinner, holding hands under the table where no one could see. An odd image hemmed in by controversy colored my mind. A young octopus vulgaris realizing its ocean potent. A habitat is shrinking, inch by inch, prey to a merciless predator it can't even see. Morning arrived reluctantly, dragging me from my restless haven. I mumbled a greeting to Daniel as we passed in the narrow hall. His hair, tousled and charmingly wild, was evidence of a restful night. How could he sleep so peacefully while I unraveled? "Wish me luck tonight," he said with a wink, before heading out to his morning jog. Each step he took away from me felt exponential, a betrayal cloaked in everyday normalcy. The day unfolded in a fog as I moved mechanically through my routines. Cooking breakfast, tidying the living room, even work lost its usual allure. By the time Daniel returned, flushed and glowing from his run, my fabricated composure hung by a thread. "You all right, Alex?" He paused, eyes boring into mine with the relentless affection I loved and loathed in equal measure. "I'm fine," I lied again, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. "Just tired." Daniel studied me for a moment longer than necessary. Maybe he knew, or maybe he refused to see. He ruffled my hair, an act as old and familiar as our shared morning coffee. "See you tonight," he said softly, a promise woven in his tone. As he retreated to shower, I sighed, the weight of unspoken emotions pressing down on me. Tonight, when Daniel left for his date, my sanctuary would thread a different narrative, a quieter, lonelier one. It would be the start of something I didn't want to acknowledge, a shift in the intimacy we had, platonically, affectionately, that guaranteed the confusion of something more. Inflamed by another's presence. And just like that, my peaceful world, cocooned in secret longing, shattered under the weight of reality. The early afternoon sun filtered through the curtains, casting golden stripes across the wooden floorboards. Stillness hung in the air, an anomaly amidst the usual hum of our shared living space. I could hear Daniel's laughter echoing in the distance, through the thin walls, a sound usually comforting, but now strangely foreign and disarming. It was as if the very house held its breath, anticipating a change I wasn't quite ready to face. I busied myself with the mundane, fixing the plant on the windowsill, rearranging the magazines on the coffee table, anything to stem the persistent flood of emotions swirling within me. But even as I found solace in routine, my mind refused to settle. It conjured images of Daniel, animated with life and joy he found elsewhere now, and my heart clenched with an unbidden pang of jealousy. If life were a movie, this scene would play with gentle background music, underscored by the soft rhythm of heartbeats. Yet there'd also be a pause, a lingering frame on my expression, a subtle confusion, half a smile gone awry, the unshed longing in my eyes. Somewhere in this script was a line, written with invisible ink, that screamed truths I wasn't ready to utter. I wasn't fine. This mattered. His happiness mattered, but so did mine, twisted as it was. I turned my focus back to the room. This sanctuary was woven with decades of laughter, camaraderie, shared secrets, etched in late-night whispers. The air carried memories of comfortable silences and familiar moments stitched together by unspoken bonds. Now, these walls bore witness to an unraveling facade I could no longer keep intact. The soft click of the door brought me back from a reverie bathed in unease. Daniel walked in, the light of the afternoon catching the hope in his features, a brightness often reserved for moments shared beyond our circle. There was a liveliness to him, a vigor from engagement with someone who wasn't me, enough to stir a secret envy. His eyes met mine, and the distance felt suddenly tangible. "You okay?" His voice held a cadence that was both probing and caring, an inquiry that tugged at my carefully constructed calm. But woven within that question was a gentle nudge, beckoning me to display the honesty he hoped for, wrap myself in his offered concern. I managed, a sound neither affirmation nor denial. It hung awkwardly in the air, bridging a gap I hadn't meant to create. "Doing some thinking," I added, almost as an afterthought. He gave a careful nod. Are we plotting the next big conspiracy or just existentially brooding? A laugh bubbled up, involuntary yet welcome, a sound that momentarily eased the disquiet. A little of both, actually, I mused. Someone has to keep the universe in check while you go off wooing strangers, right? Daniel chuckled, but a trace of something flickered in his eyes, a hesitation, maybe understanding. There was a silent dance unfolding between us, a choreography fraught with nuances, where every word, every glance layered our shared reality with more complexity. As the room drew us into a comfortable silence, my mind wove tales of what might have been, a universe where my unvoiced sentiments were buried in shadows, but instead laid bare, without caution and fear of consequence. In this world, there existed a tapestry torn, then mended with care, the colors of hope, tinged with affection, stronger with truth. Daniel interrupted the fabric of my thoughts with a soft tap on my shoulder. Coffee? A lifeline, that simple offer. I nodded, willing a semblance of normalcy into the fabric of this shifting dynamic, knowing full well that each sip would taste slightly different, marked by what lingered unspoken between us. Sure, let's forget the world for a while. My words flowed naturally, coaxing a rhythm of familiarity back into this peculiar soundtrack of our lives. Yet, as we settled back into a pattern, something deeper thrummed beneath it, a dissonance nestled between the beats, a recreation of jealousy, whispering truths I couldn't yet voice. I watched him maneuver around the kitchen, graceful in his assuredness, the sight both comforting and disconcerting. How could such an ordinary act speak of something so intricate and vast? You ever wonder why orchids are notorious for their care? I asked, shifting the atmosphere to something both curious and open-ended, evading my grappling thoughts. For the patience they demand, maybe, Daniel replied, eyes meeting mine, uncovering the real question behind my masked inquiry. Perhaps it's because they force you to learn to nurture without expecting reward, I pondered aloud, letting the metaphor stitch itself into the narrative, silently hinting at the threads unraveling within me. Daniel smiled gently, a peaceful acceptance. Once in that gesture that feloniously dismantled the boundaries within our conversation. Is that what you're worried about then? Being forgotten if you don't thrive the way others do? Kind of. My answer was soft, helplessly candid now, shrugging off pretenses in this subtle surrender. Our unspoken agreement hung heavy, as if we were conspirators in a silent pact that carried the weight of sentiment. Amidst this blend of coffee and contemplation, there was an acknowledgement of things unspoken, a silent revelation that drew us closer, even as it pulled at the seams of what once was. Here stood a moment, perfectly imperfect, a revelation that slowly altered the light's angle, setting the stage for what would follow, quietly tender and defiantly personal, marking the edge of something impossible. Possibly new. The low hum of the refrigerator punctuated the otherwise quiet kitchen, blending with the rustle of the evening wind as it threaded through the open window. I leaned against the counter, pretending my interest lay solely on the stew simmering, rather than the tempest swirling inside me. From the corner of my eye, Daniel moved around the space with an easy grace, unaware, or perhaps pointedly ignoring, the fires threatening to consume everything in their path. The scent of tomatoes and herbs mingled with a bitter taste on my tongue. Anger tinged with jealousy, a cocktail that threatened to spill over at any moment. I focused on stirring, each motion deliberate, the spoon a lifeline keeping the darker emotions at bay. But as Daniel approached, carrying the familiar warmth of his presence, everything and the mundane act of cooking felt weighted with the potential for revelation. "Smells great," he offered absently, his attention divided between me and the text on his phone. That device, I mused with a hint of malevolence, was like the Pandora's box for my sanity, carrying messages that made his face light up with smiles that were no longer reserved solely for our home. Dieter sent me another meme. You should see this one. It's hilarious. Daniel's laughter bounced off the kitchen walls, and although born of its natural quality, the sound grated against my resolve. I turned slightly, letting my eyes skim over the screen he held before me. An image meant to be funny, now transformed into a silent herald of what I lacked. The knowing twist of fate? I couldn't laugh even if I wanted to. Funny, I murmured, the word a barely contained sigh slipping through the exhaustion pooling in my mind. I watched him return to his texting, oblivious to the storm brewing within me. A conspiracy in motion, secrets whispered to myself even as I tried to tend them, like misguided vines wound tightly around my heart. I imagined his laughter with Dieter, the shared looks, moments I couldn't witness, familiar intimacies reserved for another. There was a theory once, crafted in some forgotten midnight reverie, that each flicker of jealousy was a compass pointing towards unspoken truth. Perhaps this truth sat festering as I worked tirelessly to ignore it. But the fates, or some obscure universal law, seemed intent on wrenching it free. I'm glad you found someone who makes you happy. A slow admission, wrapped in the guise of sincerity, yet riddled with the raw bitterness clawing at my chest. Daniel paused, his fingers stilling on the screen as those words hung between us, like accusations disguised as congratulations. His brow furrowed, the innocence of his smile gone, replaced by a questioning glance that sought answers in the spaces between my words. "Are you okay?" His voice was soft, barely more than a whisper, filled with that endearing vulnerability I couldn't face without unraveling. "You've been quiet lately." Quiet. The word echoed like a subtle condemnation, exposing the silence I've cloaked myself in, becoming larger than the room and louder than the thoughts I dared not voice. Daniel, picking up on the fractured pieces of our existence, dared to for them, though unknowingly threatened to slash through saran-wrapped secrets of lingering sentiments. The air became thicker, pressing heavily against my lungs as I searched my mind's corridor, longing for escape, yet finding none. A battle ensued within, one part waging war against yearning, the other defending the necessity of silence. The lines blurred, yet still remained uncrossed until the dam broke unexpectedly. "If I didn't know any better," I began, the words slipping without consent, "I'd think you were turning our home into Dieter's second address." The kitchen grew silent. Every molecule of shared air paused to witness the breach. Seconds stretched thin between us, almost tangible in their tension, crafted by disbelief and a tinge of hurt twisting Daniel's expression. It was. The slip, the misstep. Jealousy unveiled, and vulnerable where I had intended the opposite. "Is that what this is about?" His voice trembled slightly, forcing a crack through the veneer shielding both my intentions and feelings. "You think I'm not here with you?" I pressed my lips together, tasting regret mixed in the salt of the stew's steam. The room's warmth contrasted the cold apprehension clawing at my gut. "Maybe I do. I don't know anymore," I admitted, the words outpacing the last of my resolve, ushering in a murky shift I hadn't meant to inspire. The change settled, wrapping around the awkwardness that followed. This moment, a turning point, one perhaps more intimate than I had bargained for. The confession, albeit indirect, drew us into uncharted territory, away from the supposed safety of unspoken truths we had accepted like stubborn fools. Daniel hesitated, his gaze searching mine, deeper now, beyond the mask, seeking that which defied understanding. "I see you, always," he replied, his voice breaking through the ricochet of awkwardness, exerting its undeniable presence. And with that, when our hearts aligned for a beat, I knew that for all the conspiracies, calculations, and revenge plans I'd whispered to the nighttime shadows, the fractured pieces of truth within me could not return to their shadows. In Daniel's eyes, there lay a fragile hope, hinting at depths I hadn't anticipated. The room seemed to shimmer under the weight of the moment, a kaleidoscope of unknowns unfolding in the stillness between us. Daniel stood there, his silhouette outlined by the golden glow spilling through the open window. Outside, the world kept its usual pace, oblivious to the universe-altering shifts transpiring within these walls. Yet here, nothing felt ordinary, not the air that crackled with unspoken words, nor the gravity that seemed intent on pulling my heart from its fortress. I could feel it, the unraveling, a thread pulled taut and snapping, the tension echoing in the silence. It's comical, isn't it? This notion that love can so profoundly disrupt what society has neatly pieced together? My supposed safety, my fortress of platitudes and smiles, chipped away piece by fragile piece. My heart lunged at the truth I had fought so valiantly to suppress. "Why are you always here, waiting?" Daniel's voice carried through me, a gentle probe edging toward intimacy. His eyes met mine, swimming with questions, diving where words feared to tread. He awaited not just an answer, but revelation, a conspiracy of emotions that had long opposed logic's reign. I found myself tracing the contours of his face in the shadows, seeking latitude and longitude in the rise and fall of his breathing. Did he mean to unravel the tangled web I had woven? For a heartbeat, it seemed plausible. His gaze held nothing but sincerity and the faintest whisper of challenge. Caught in this perpetual dance of feeling and fearing, I weighed the risks. Would my nocturnal calculations, those whispers shared, with the shadows of my room, grant me a moment of absolution? Fingers brushed my temple, a grounding contact as if I could erase doubts with touch alone. I swallowed hard against the knot forming in my throat. "You mean more than you know," I murmured, attempting to reconcile the cruel dichotomy of our relationship, a shapeshifter where love hid its truest form beneath brotherhood's skin. The tone, unsteady yet unyielding, cracked the silence that stretched between us. Savage in its simplicity, the phrase cared little for pleasantries. Daniel leaned forward, a tilt of curiosity setting us at odds with all that had gone before. "And your silence? It hurts more than you might think." The raw truth unveiled without fanfare, like a bolt from the blue, unraveling assumptions painted with certainty, explored only in the recesses of my mind. Perhaps our silence was the real controversy, a shared refuge that masked deeper truths spiraling in us like galaxies contained. The walls I had erected now shifted, their foundation cracking beneath the weight of compounded truths. Words trembled on the brink of my lips, a confession or revolt, I couldn't yet tell. "You have him, Daniel, can't you see?" The unwelcome bitterness colored my voice, a sharp edge slicing through any remaining hopes. "He's your happiness. Do I still matter?" In the pause that followed, a symphony of heartbeats ensued, the crescendo singing of crises, of conspiracies doomed to unravel. Daniel's face, a testament to the fragility of longing, spoke before he even formed words. Breath hissed between clenched teeth, emotion inscribed upon his frown. "Is that what you think?" The question hung before us, a balance tipping toward either calamity or catharsis. Strange how truth, elusive yet steadfast, could claim such dominion in the minutes we shared. My fortitude crumbled. guilt blooming in the pit of my stomach, born from my revenge plans against solitude. In his lingering silence, I discerned a plea. One intrepid step forward, the shift palpable in the air that surged between us, an invitation for vulnerability, for unmasking. With damp certainty, my words finally came. I see you, happy with him, content where I'll never be. But then there's this, the haunting feeling that maybe my voice, caught as truth, tilled the soil of my heart, exposing everything raw and unfinished. Tears dared to form at the corners of my eyes, released from their cells as secrets tumbled into the open air. Daniel softened, stepping into the breach with a kindness musicians dream to replicate in their best overtures. You do matter, to me, always, just not in the ways we've set on these false paths. Paths riddled with uncertainty, mere facsimiles of understanding. I'd weaponized my perception, the calculations flawed in ways neither one of us foresaw. But in Daniel's words lay absolution, teetering on the promise of something larger, a synergy poised at the precipice of exploration. We stood, warriors locked in a battle of intention, sifting through debris left by hidden truths. And just like a glimmer emerged, a fragile hope, buoyed by tears unshed, daring us to reach for closeness that might redefine everything. Perhaps this was the turning point, the moment our hearts synchronized in their collective aspiration for understanding. In the blur of emotions, connections shifted, revealing spaces where light filtered through, urging us forward. Against the backdrop of our cosmic collision, I discovered a bitter yet sweet clarity. In the convergence of love and longing stood the promise of redemption, inviting us to embark on a journey unexplored. The room was steeped in twilight, shadows pooling at the corners like secrets whispering between us. I stood at the edge of revelation, my heart daring me to navigate this fragile terrain. There was something poetic, almost cinematic, about the tension hanging in the air. We were like two players in an ancient drama, forced to confront truths that had long lingered beneath the surface. My brother sat across from me, his gaze soft yet rooted in curiosity, a curiosity that carried the vulnerability of 1,000 unasked questions. His presence was magnetic but understated, both an anchor and a tempest. The air was charged with unspoken words, and I was about to dangle on the precipice of confession, ready to bare my soul while hoping it wouldn't shatter under this delicate admission. Have you ever really thought about the paths we're on? I asked, my voice a muted tremor amidst the lengthening shadows, attempting to delay the inevitable. There was a conspiracy in the pause, a break where meanings danced just beyond reach. His brows knitted in mild confusion. What do you mean? He shuffled slightly on the couch, the fabric rustling like leaves caught in autumn's windy grasp. I exhaled, slow and measured, as if I had any control over this fragile moment. You know, how sometimes we walk paths we didn't choose, but maybe need? It was an odd attempt, weaving threads of conversation around the precarious truth I was about to reveal. He nodded, an approximate understanding coloring his expression. I guess everyone does that, he replied, his tone a melody of reluctance, and I could sense his intrigue blossoming into quiet impatience, urging me forward. I continued, each word a fragile piece of something larger, hoping to construct a bridge across the chasm between us. Well, sometimes those paths lead us to strange places, places where we keep secrets and hope they're never discovered, I ventured, each syllable a calculated risk. His eyes glimmered with something nearly imperceptible. Maybe it was the hint of conspiracy, one that spoke of reality poised on discovery, or perhaps it was understanding, burgeoning like dawn in the distance. For a moment, the room felt like a cocoon, sheltering us in its silence. I drew in a breath, feeling the fragility of the cosmos settle in the spaces between us. "Like us," I said softly, letting the weight. An uncertain silence wrapped around us, a pause pregnant with meaning, anticipation etched into the invisible fabric connecting us. My gaze locked onto his, as if piercing through the veil of ambiguity to unearth the essence we had carefully tucked away. Then, with an understated resolve, he leaned forward. "You mean us?" His words were tentative, navigating the uncharted waters of our connection. Yes, it was a singular note, creating shivers in the atmosphere. I swallowed the alarm rising within me, the fear of redefining us, of disassembling the carefully curated roles we'd occupied for so long. The flicker of recognition in his eyes was profound, a realization that cascaded over him with serene inevitability. A series of emotions unfolded in short evocative. He sat back, the upholstery marking the soft surrender to this truth, as though we were puppets whose strings had been cut and found freedom in our fall. "I had no idea," he admitted, his voice dissolving into a beauty that only honesty can forge. Something shifted. A revelation curved into our atmosphere, smoothing the edges of our fragmented selves. His face mirrored mine, the vulnerability adding layers of meaning to this exchange. It was a map, dotted with confession and compassion, a geography of souls entwined. "It's been a long dance, hasn't it?" I said with melancholy humor, hoping the lightness would soften the disembodied truth hovering between us. He chuckled, a sound both fragile and assuring. "A very long dance," he agreed, his erection unfolding with diminishing borders, his vulnerability like a caress against my fear. Our eyes locked again, a timeless moment crystallized between shared breaths, and I knew we were transitioning into something deeper, something new. Understanding melded with hope, giving us the courage to inch closer to a realm of infinite possibilities. "I never wanted to risk losing you," I confessed, my voice now transformed into a quiet melody of sincerity, piercing the silence like a beacon. A gentle smile emerged on his lips, his empathy a balm to my unrest. "You've never lost me," he reassured, his words gentle and transformative, marking the beginning of a promise we hadn't dared to articulate. In the hushed aftermath of revelation, we sat together, basking in the glow of deepening intimacy. A warmth that eradicated the shadows, revealing pathways once obscured. The air was a tapestry of quiet potential, and as evening deepened, we found new contours in our connection, both strengthened and softened by understanding. In the fragile serenity of truth shared, a new dawn beckoned, embracing our hearts with the grace we had silently longed for, two souls reconciling the collective aspiration for tomorrow. Thus, a shift occurred, marking our heart's progression to a tender, hopeful realm, a glimpse into the uncharted journey just beginning. The evening air wrapped around us like a comforting velvet cloak, casting a soft glow that accentuated the hushed tones of forgiveness and connection. Moonlight filtered through the curtains, creating a delicate pattern on the walls, an intricate dance of shadows, reminiscent of constellations attempting to trace our intertwined destiny. Just moments ago, the air was thick with sadness and misunderstandings, yet here we sat, two figures silhouetted against a backdrop of uncertainty, now reframed with the clarity of truth unleashed. I felt the warmth of his presence shift closer, the gravity of his heart pulling mine into a collision, gentle, unwavering. We were anchored here, in a moment that defied the chaos of the past and promised more than either of us had words to express. An inscrutable, a smile began to paint his lips, a reticent grace manifesting itself as the uncomfortable tension of unspoken dreams slowly dissolved into something simpler, something achingly unconditional. A funny thing, isn't it? How we can create entire worlds in our minds, sculptures of reality forged from misunderstanding. His voice wove through the quiet room, threads of contemplation tangling with a subtle edge of relief. The elegant dance of his fingers traced abstract patterns on the fabric of the couch, each gesture a deliberation of unvoiced thoughts. I nodded, understanding the peculiar elegance of his revelation. Here we were, architects of a fantasy constructed on the shoulders of silence, breaching the veneer of what we presumed to be protected. Perhaps it was his gaze, easy and knowing, or the way his presence touched mine without utterance, but in that fragile space I found solace. I didn't trust the idea of having feelings that didn't fit the narrative we'd learned to live by, I confessed, the admission like a fugitive escaping into dawn. It was controversial, wasn't it, to believe that love could evolve beyond its conventional boundaries, that hearts could decide for themselves without asking permission from the world. Yet here, surrounded by the intimacy of a moment tenderly draped in moonlit sincerity, anything felt possible. He toyed with the edge of the cushion, eyes drawn to the way the material resisted beneath pressure, a constellation of micro-tensions addressed silently. Could we, too, reshuffle the stars in our personal firmament to accommodate this newfound understanding? Seems like we were never really good at following the rules, he mused, a subtle smile flitting across his features, a conspiracy shared without resistance. A shared chuckle became our peculiar ritual, echoing in the chambers of what had once been unsaid. And indeed, breaking the rules had led us here, to a nexus that offered not just redemption, but the promise of a future unmarred by the tangles of yesterday. I looked at him, really looked, seeing in his expression an unyielding resolve tempered by affection. Revenge plans against loneliness, a communion of hearts reclaiming what solitude had sought to steal. There were calculations now unfolding within each bare interaction, conspiracies of warmth rewriting us. "We've got this," he said softly, his words a conspiracy of hope, deliberately avoiding the past of its frailties. It was a promise born not of forced assurances, but of shared conviction, a pledge to journey forward, hand in hand, no map needed. A heartbeat draped in quiet, his hand reached beyond its restraint, finding mine with an innocence that belied the complex tapestry of emotions behind the gesture. Such a simple act, yet charged with unspoken truths, an oddity like appreciating the gravity-defying beauty of inverted trees. There was no precedent for this moment, a controversial mode of acceptance. Nestled beside him, I found the strength to reciprocate, weaving my fingers through his, feeling the pulse of life affirming each other's presence, an evolving symphony wrapped in vulnerability and promise. In this room, the world became inexplicably small, a universe contracting into a fragment of understanding, where fears dissipated into echoes of yesterday, leaving behind a canvas of silent potential. The gift of seeing him through the lens of unclouded intimacy, the harsh lines of anticipation softened into blurred edges of reality. "I'm glad we stopped running," I murmured, letting my words cradle the space between us, settling into the rhythm of our shared heartbeat, a testament of gratitude to the journey that had brought us here, amid the improbabilities and reckless hope. His shoulders relaxed, dropping the weight of unspoken fears, and for the first time, I saw us both, through the haze of affection, unburdened by the harshness of expectation. definitions had shifted and now held us free to navigate. The uncharted. It was one of those odd truths, realizing that sometimes the strength to remain untouched by uncertainty lay within the courage to kiss the brink of the impossible, knowing it might just transform into something surprisingly boundless, a freedom discovered not in solitude, but shared vulnerability. Our breathing synced, a silent agreement woven into the fabric of our restored fellowship, a balm soothing the frailties of dreams once hidden but not lost. And somewhere in this quiet completeness, we stood on the threshold of a revolution, a space where love ceased to be merely an idea or fear, but claimed an existence, a path unencumbered, walking into the promise of tomorrow, hand in unabashed hand.